Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome to Friday Night Filmstrips. And to kick these videos off, we're going to be taking a look at a film suggested to me by my friend Badger. In this case, we're going to be starting things off with FernGully, The Last Rainforest. Now, what are my experiences with this movie prior to this vlog? Well, I fully admit, until today, I had never seen the entirety of this movie. I've seen chunks of it here and there. Like, I remember one time when I was in elementary school, we had it was raining during recess, so we had an indoor recess, and this was the film that they had on. So I do remember kind of watching it there, though I think only really catching a good chunk of it before recess ended. And then likewise, I think I've seen it like every now and then on TV, but never all the way through. And I know I've seen a review of the movie, but I've never actually sat down and watched it from beginning to end. So this was the first time that I actually got a chance to actually see it for myself and actually form my own opinion on it. Mind you, because of various other people's opinions on it, I got an idea of what the film was about, but like I said, never saw it all the way through, so never really had one for myself. But since the whole point of these vlogs is to be introduced to these new things and see films that friends of mine grew up with and would recommend to others, well, this is my chance to finally form an opinion on it. And do I think it's a good movie? Do I see in it what my friend Badger saw? In some ways, yes. In other ways, not so much. But why do I feel like that? Well, let's take a look at the film and find out. And Badger, if you're watching this, I hope you enjoy it, and apologies in advance. So, yeah, with that all said, let's take a look at FernGully, The Last Rainforest. And, of course, to kick things off, we gotta look at our long-ass plot summary. And, well, our main character for FernGully is a fairy by the name of Krista. She lives in the titular FernGully, which is, of course, a luscious rainforest that's teeming with life, full of beautiful animals and luscious creatures, ripe fruits, beautiful flowers. It's just paradise, and she spends her days flying around, exploring everything along with her fairy friends, including this Fabio-looking shirtless guy by the name of Pips, which the fact that his name is Pips is hilarious to me, and his gang of bugs, I think. And basically, she's just a free spirit who loves seeing in the beauty of nature, loves taking it all in, exploring it, and just living a happy-go-lucky life. Mind you, though, she does have a big place in the terms of the fairy society. For you see, she is meant to inherit the mantle of this one elder fairy by the name of Magi Luna, who is, well, I guess you could pretty much just say the elder of the fairy people, especially since, well, she's done some very heavy shit in her years. Mostly because once upon a time and long ago, the forest was practically endless. The fairies were in tune with everything that lived in it, and they were most attuned with humans. However, one day, everything kind of went to hell as a creature by the name of Hexus appeared and pretty much began ravaging the land, sucking all life out of everything, which forced many creatures to flee from the forest, humans included, with humans being the only ones to not return, and thus the fairies just assumed they were extinct. Ultimately, the Magi Luna was able to use her powers to seal Hexus in a tree, and he's been there ever since, but the thing is, Magi Luna, while old, is not eternal. So eventually she'll pass on and someone needs to take her mantle, which is once again, like I said, where Krista comes in. But Krista doesn't really pay attention during the lessons because since she's so much of a free spirit, she wants to see everything of the forest, explore, socialize, and all that nice little crap. However, during one of these little outings with Pips and his gang, sorry, she ends up flying over the canopy of the forest, which is a big no-no when it comes to fairy society, since, well, flying that high up kind of makes you a sitting duck for any predators that are flying about, like an eagle, which almost takes a swipe at Krista. However, while she's flying above the canopy, she finally gets her glimpse of a world beyond FernGully, and she thinks it looks amazing. Luscious blue skies, forests as far as the eye can see, and nearby a mountain she sees what looks like smoke, which confuses her because she's never seen smoke before. But either way, she's eventually brought back down because of the aforementioned eagle, but she's just so enraptured by what she saw that she's just like, oh, I have to go tell Magi Luna about this. And so while Pips tries calming her down, she just kind of ditches him and his crew to go back to Magi Luna. And after dealing with these two ostriches, I think? Maybe? I don't know. But she manages to meet up with Magi Luna and begins asking her about all this, telling her about what she saw, about all these things. But Magi Luna is kind of just disregarding all this. In fact, when she mentions what she saw with the smoke, about how it was a black fume, and Magi Luna just says, oh yeah, that was smoke, but it's no big deal. But she just kind of wants to, like, basically, she's just all enraptured. Like I said, she's just enraptured by this. But Magi Luna is just kind of not ignoring her concerns, especially when she mentions how the smoke was near a mountain that's called Mount Warning, which is actually a real place. It's in Australia, which means that this movie actually takes place in Australia. So there you go. But whatever. My point. But either way, Magi Luna's just kind of disregarding all this, wanting instead to use this moment as a teachable moment for Krista as she tries to impart upon her some of her wisdom, which in this case is about how magic can be found in all forms of life. That all you have to do is just feel it, have a connection to it, and she tries showcasing that by planting a seed on what looks like a tree of a withered tree trunk, which at first Krista tries to bring to life utilizing magic, but unfortunately fails as the tree trunk almost collapses. Magi Luna is able to restore it, but Krista just feels disheartened. But Magi Luna just says it's fine. It gives her the whole again. You have to feel the connection, sort of thing. As such, Krista just eventually does leave to try and do her own thing, where she runs into Pips and so forth. But as the pair of them are talking and she lets him know about what she's found, they get interrupted, namely by a bat, played by Robin Williams, who was just flying around with what looks like an electrode. Sorry, an electrode stuck to his head, which is shorting out, causing him to fly all over the place. He's just freaking the hell out until he eventually crashes into a tree. Krista goes and sees him, and he almost flies right up to her, but she's able to calm him down as she actually manages to cast a spell, gifting the bat named Batty Coda with the gift of sight. And Batty, once he gets his senses, sort of, begins realizing where the heck he is and begins introducing himself. And it's here where I should also mention another thing about FernGully. It's a musical. In fact, the very first song in the musical was showcased when Krista and Pips were flying around FernGully, and that song was called "Life Is a Magic Thing." Which was actually a pretty nice and upbeat song. I dug it. But the next song is called "Batty Rap." It's a rap by Batty. It's not fun. It's actually kind of annoying. But ultimately, it's just here to kind of explain what Batty's backstory is. Put simply, Batty was a test animal. He worked at he was set up as an experiment in a biology lab, and ultimately the humans there just tested on him, sent surges through him that just messed him up, and he only just managed to escape. But obviously, such an experience kind of stuck with Batty, and he's got a tad bit of PTSD and wants something to do with humans. However, once he mentions anything about humans, Krista is just enraptured because she just wants to hear more about humans, about there really are humans there, which the other fairies just kind of ignore because, well, they think humans are extinct. They don't give it. He's probably just talking crazy. But Krista is still more concerned, still wants to know more, and manages to lure Batty away and does manage to ask him more specific questions. And he does mention that apparently there are humans, specifically near Mount Warning, where the black smoke is. And so Krista decides that she's actually going to utilize this information and go and see the humans, with Batty following after. Which, once Batty learns that what Krista wants to do is go meet the humans, he's not really for it. He does go with Krista, but mostly to try and convince her to turn back, which she just kind of ignores. Unfortunately for Krista, it turns out that something's a bit fishy going on. For you see, while I mentioned that Magi Luna did kind of disregard what Krista was saying earlier, she did in reality take it seriously, and once Krista had left her, she did open up the forest, so to speak, well, quite literally, and see the smoke, and began to realize that this might be a bad thing. And sure enough, as Krista tries flying to the source of the smoke, she ends up going over what looks like a somewhat barren plain, which when she tries approaching it, Batty gets so terrified that he decides to hang back. But as she crosses over it, she manages to find a grove of trees that are all marked with red X's. hexes, which at first confuses her, but as we, the audience, go further into the forest, we soon see what the cause is. It's the enemy of all nature, the thing that ravages the earth and drags it down into the muck. It is man. And we see them as they're in the middle of pretty much just tearing up a bunch of trees with this big machine that was called a leveler. That pretty much just being able to cut down trees, grab the logs, and immediately grind them up into wood. Basically the red X's are just by employees of the people that are utilizing the leveler. And of course, the red marks are spray paint on to let them know, hey, this tree's marked for demolition. Go and take care of it. And so we just kind of see this as we see these two, I want to say dummy guys, as they're just kind of sitting in the cockpit. I forgot their names. I genuinely don't know. I think one's named Murph. The other's Ralph and Murph? I don't know. My point is, these two guys are the ones that are in charge of the leveler, while outside are all the employees spray painting the trees. One of which is our other main character for this movie, Zach. This blonde-haired guy who has a sleeveless shirt, jeans, listens to music on his Walkman stereo, who acts all hip and bodacious, bro. And yeah, he's basically just working for this company as a summer job. Though it's clear he doesn't take the whole thing too seriously, which even the people running the leveler are like, okay, he probably does not belong here. Yeah, but either way, he is doing his job. But either way, he's just doing his job, cutting spray marking trees that are due for demolition and so on and so forth. However, as he walks through the forest, one particular tree catches Zach's eye, and as he goes closer, well, remember how I said at the beginning of the movie the Hexus was imprisoned in a tree by Magiluna? Well, we get to see Hexus's tree right now, and I'll give credit where it's due. It's imposing. Like, I love how the fact that all the trees kind of surrounding the grove where this one is, are brittle. Like, this tree itself radiates death, and it's spreading out to all the other ones in the vicinity. Not enough to kill them, but enough so that they're weaker than your standard tree. And when Zach actually approaches the tree that Hexus is imprisoned in, you can see the flowers on it are black, no life in it. That there's just the thing just radiates death, and it just feels off, just creepy and disturbing. So I'll give you that. That's a nice way of helping build up the mood, so to speak. But either way, as Zach is taking the tree in, a fly ends up flying around his head and annoys him. And to try and kill it, he tries spraying it with his spray can, which does end up killing the fly. But he also ends up marking the Hexus tree. And while Zach doesn't see this, as he walks away to go do his job elsewhere, well, the instant the paint gets on the tree, it starts boiling as we hear something sinisterly whisper, Hexus. I give credit, it's actually pretty good. It actually is a good way of building anticipation. But either way, Krista begins flying throughout the woods and she ends up managing to catch up with Zach, actually seeing him as he's just going about doing his own thing, spraying the trees and so forth. But as Zach is just kind of grooving out to his jams, eventually he eventually ends up knocking into a tree, and his Walkman gets knocked out of his pocket and floats down a stream, which naturally annoys him. But in the midst of all this, he sees Krista. Well, sort of. He sees her fairy glow in the brush, and naturally, he's a little curious about her, and so he decides to go in and investigate until he eventually finds her. Though, from his perspective, he doesn't actually see a fairy, he just sees a blue light, and while he manages to catch her, he still can't make her out. My guess is... Sorry, had ramen while watching the movie, so it's still adjusting. My guess is that when it comes to fairies, they can't actually be seen by mortal eyes, at least not in the conventional sense. After all, when Krista went to Batty, her spell explicitly said that she gave him the gift of fairy sight, and so... as that spell affected him, he began being able to make out Krista more, which gives me the impression that only a certain specific people can actually see and perceive fairies. Mind you, that doesn't mean that that people can't perceive something when they see fairies, because even before Batty was gifted with a sight, he recognized that there was something in front of him But in the case of, but likewise with Zack, when he, but likewise with Zack, he's likewise until Batty was hit with a spell, he couldn't actually make out specific details about Krista. And it's a similar thing with Zack here. As he manages to grab Krista in his hand, all he sees is a blue glow. He doesn't actually see Krista herself, but Krista can see Zack, and she's once more in awe of this creature. Unfortunately, that awe doesn't last very long because, well, it turns out that Zack's bosses got tired of waiting for him, and so they wound up and they started cutting down the various trees that he marked, with one of the trunks almost landing on Zack. And so Krista, freaking the hell out, immediately tries helping Zack by casting the fairy sight on him so that he can see her and she can warn him to get the hell out of the way. Unfortunately, though, when she gets to the part about fairy sight, she ends up flubbing her words and instead says fairy sighs. Sorry about that. And as a result, instead of Zack being able to just perceive fairies, he shrinks to their size and almost gets crushed by the tree. He doesn't, but he does get caught in a spider's web. The spider's web that's connected to said tree. So yeah, as the tree is being slowly fed to the leveler, Zack is also on it. Krista ends up freaking the hell out, because why wouldn't she? But thankfully she manages to get Zack free from the webbing and get away from the leveler. With the guys running said leveler, just think that Zack just kind of turned in without seeing them, which I think is stupid. Personally, I would have halted operations immediately and started looking for this guy if he didn't report back in. So, yeah, these guys are not good at their jobs. Not good at all. But whatever. Krista manages to get Zack away. Though Batty managed to come in and say, Batty comes in and saves Krista and Zack. Though once Batty realizes that Zack is a human, he freaks the hell out and gets so freaked out that he ends up crashing into a tree, resulting in him dropping both Krista and Zack. Which I'll give credit where it's due. One of the things that I do genuinely find funny with Batty is the fact that he just hates Zack. From the very outset, he just hates this guy, and at several points advocates for just killing him, just because he just doesn't like humans. So, I don't know, I find that darkly humorous. He's actually gleeful about it at several points. It's actually kind of funny. But whatever, I'm getting off topic again. But ultimately, when Zack wakes up, eventually Zack does wake up after Krista trifles through his pockets and steals his wallet and a pocket knife. And at first, Zack wants to know what the hell is going on. His perspective, he was just holding a blue light in his hand before he suddenly blacked out. And now here he is sitting on a branch with this cute fairy lady standing over him, brandishing his knife and a bat. Which once he sees Batty, he grabs his knife and threatens him because he thinks he's here to kill Krista. But Krista's able to get both Batty and Zack to calm down and lets him know it's all right, he's fine. So at first, Zack. Once Zack calms down, he tries kind of organizing things in his head and tries to figure out what exactly is happening to him. At first, he thinks that the tree crushed him and now he's dead. But Krista assures him no, he's very much alive, and so he thinks, oh, then I must be dreaming then, because if I wasn't dreaming, then I would be seeing myself then I'd actually be talking to what looks like a fairy and a bat. But Krista tells him, yeah, that's what's actually happening. But once again, Zack doesn't believe it and decides he's just gonna go off until he can wake up from said dream. Unfortunately, because Zack is kind of being stupid, he ends up walking off the branch and ends up just falling to the ground below. Thankfully, he manages to catch a ride on a leaf, which allows him to glide through the air on it. I don't know. I feel like he'd be heavier than that. But eventually, as he flies through the forest, he eventually ends up near a predator, which is I think an iguana voiced by Tone Loc. I don't know how to pronounce his name. And it leads to another song, which is called. Sorry, I'm gonna look this up because I didn't remember every little detail. It's called "If I'm Gonna Eat Somebody, It Might As Well Be You," and it's a song all about this iguana wanting to eat Zack, and it's strangely sexualized. It's weird. I don't like it. It's creepy. But yeah, the song does eventually end with the iguana almost eating Zack, though though the iguana lets Zack go when Krista vouches for him and says that Zack's one of her friends. So, yeah, the iguana's disappointed, but he lets Zack go, but he complies. But once Zack escapes from that, he suddenly realizes, holy shit, I'm not dreaming, I'm somehow small, you're a fairy, where the heck am I? And so Krista does explain to Zack what happened, that he was almost eaten by the large monster, and to save him, she tried to give him the power of fairy sight, but instead shrunk him. And so Zack obviously wants to go back to normal because, well, he was shrunk. And so Krista tries doing the reverse spell, but because her magic is still not perfect, it doesn't really go well. I personally think it's because she tried to unshrink him in an enclosed area, and so as a result, it kind of fucks up the spell and just causes parts of his body to keep enlarging at random until he eventually settles back to the small size. So Krista thinks that she probably shouldn't attempt this spell, as even she admits she's an amateur. As such, she tells Zack that if they can get back to FernGully, then maybe they can get Magiluna to do the spell, to perform the reverse spell, since she's better at magic than Krista is. And while Zack is a little annoyed at this, he does comply because, well, he wants to be normal-sized again, and like I said, Krista's an amateur. As such, the pair of them decide that they need to head back to FernGully, with Batty kind of just tagging along because he doesn't trust Zack, and he probably doesn't want Krista to get hurt. So yeah, the trio make their way off, with Zack and Krista introducing themselves via what Zack wants to do, a handshake, which Krista just assumes is like just extending your hand at someone. And so they begin traveling through the forest, seeing the various sights and all that. In the meantime, however, back with Zack's employers, the Levelers made its way further into the forest of marked trees, and sure enough, they do eventually manage to find their way to the Hexus tree, and since, like I said, Zack marked it with an X, they believe that it's ID'd for demolition, and begin cutting right into it. And while they do face a bit of difficulty, which makes sense, Magiluna at one point earlier in the movie mentioned how the tree was so strong that no natural force could cut through it, eventually they managed to put enough effort into the machine, and they just start slicing and dicing the tree and processing its bits into wood. Which, yeah, it turns out that's enough for Hexus, as this allows him to get free. As the wood made from his tree is processed, he actually oozes right out of it as a little pile of slime and goop, which, again, I'll give credit, looks creepy, especially as it begins oozing around and just looking for sources of food, since, well, Hexus is just poison incarnate, and since this is a machine, of course it runs on oil, so of course oil is like mother's milk to him, which is actually the terminology he uses, as he begins just going throughout the machine and eating portions of it until it makes him stronger and stronger, getting a much more tangible form, and he begins little by little, and so Hexus begins realizing where the heck he is and what the heck's going on, as he manages to make his way out of the machine, having absorbed enough of the toxins to actually give himself a much more corporeal form than before, and realizes, oh, it's the humans behind this. And yes, as I mentioned in the prologue, Hexus is voiced by Tim Curry, and while he doesn't have a lot of lines in the movie, the lines he does have, they're fun. They are just fun. And so basically, Hexus begins realizing the potential of this machine, and he wants it. And if he's going to be controlling it, then he might as well sick it on the people who put him in that tree in the first place. Well, FernGully. As such, after managing to make his way into the machine, he manages to trick the guys running the leveler to go to FernGully by pretending to be their boss. How? Why? I don't know. It's through an intercom speaker, and I guess their boss just sounds like Tim Curry, so whatever. Point is, he tells them, go to FernGully, and I want you there by morning, do double shifts if you have to, don't do it, just don't breaks. And while these two morons are a little hesitant to do this, at the same time, hey, it's overpay, so why not? So they just crank the leveler up to max, and head straight to FernGully, cutting down any trees they can find in the process. And as for Hexus, well, this also leads to another actually tantalizing song in this movie, Toxic Love, as Hexus begins singing about how he can drain the life out of everything, how it makes him stronger, more powerful, how all these things combine together, and how his relationship with these fumes is like toxic love. And yeah, as he begins absorbing the fumes, his form becomes more smoggy. He looks more like smoke than tar before. But through the song, he manages to make his way into, I guess, the center of the machine's workings, and essentially becomes the very smoke that the machine runs on, which I guess gives him control of the machine. I don't know. Point is, he's now being expelled from the machine's fumes, and the leveler is now being set on FernGully, so, you know, that's not good. In the meantime, though, back with Krista and Zack, they are making their way more and more into FernGully, and Krista is naturally asking Zack questions. Why humans haven't come back to the forest? After all, they seem to be thriving. So don't they want to have that connection again? And Zack mentions how actually he lives in the city, and when Krista begins asking him about the monster that attacked him, Zack just mentions that wasn't a monster, it was a machine. A machine designed to cut down trees, which when Krista hears that, she's like, you wouldn't have made that, would you? And Zack is nervous, and, well, Krista, when she asks the question, just gives him the biggest doe eyes that she could possibly give. And Zack's like, no, humans don't do that. We don't fight them. We don't destroy trees. And she's like, oh, and then those X's that you said, and he even tried those X's, and he even says that the machine won't come to FernGully, which she thinks, those red X's that you saw, those that you put on there, that's like a barrier, right? It's like, yeah, that's it. I'm guessing what really is going on is the case that FernGully was not set for demolition, because I suspect, this isn't confirmed, but I suspect that part of the reason why the leveler was going after the specific trees it was because, like I said, they were brittle, probably dying already, so they probably just thought we need to chop these things down now. Though, again, that's speculation. I have known neighbors in my own neighborhood who have cut down perfectly fine trees just because the wood is worth some moolah, so what do I know? But either way, Zack's stories do placate Krista and do make her believe that Zack is on the up and up. But basically, as Zack and Krista continue going, they eventually stop and rest at what looks like mushrooms on a tree, and that's where the topic of Zack living in a city is from. Which even with him even telling her that they don't typically have a lot of trees in the city, which Krista is horrified at because, well, because trees give us the air, they give us rain and all that stuff, and so Zack. And Zack says, oh, we have air, but she says, well, trees give us other things. So then he's just like, what? And Krista tells him, listen. And it also leads to another song, which I think is called Raining Like Starlight. Hold on one second, I'll be right back. Sorry about that. But yeah, the song is called Raining Like Magic. And it's again, beautiful song. It's really nice. Really nice, and Zack does kind of think it's nice and cool, which allows him to share some of his lingo with Krista, which allows him to hit it off and get closer and all that nice jazz, though the dent is kind of formed in their budding relationship, as the next day, after the two of them are done resting, Krista catches Zack as he's in the middle of carving her name into a tree, which is a big FernGully no-no because, well, the tree can feel that pain, and she even asks Zack, can't you feel it? Which Zack does, and Krista laments how Zack just doesn't see it, and how he probably never will, but Zack is not a meathead. He at least realizes that he effed up, so he at least tries to make peace by trying to, change the subject and ask Krista where FernGully is. And while Krista is too forlorn to talk to him, she at least does direct him and put him in the right direction. And so Zack manages to lift some more spirits because, well, she sat down and looked like a pod, and so Zack jumps in said pod and then just pushes it down a hill as they ride into a river, which does manage to get Krista happy again as they both just continue go down until eventually they reach FernGully, which, upon arriving, that's when Pips and his gang come up and grab Zack because they have absolutely no idea what the hell he is. As such, Chris is able to tell them, oh no, this guy's a human, and after Pip's gang tries taking a few tastes of Zack, no, I mean it, they actually lick him and bite his hair because they want to see how he tastes. Again, excuse me. Krista does manage to bring Zack further into FernGully and tries showing him off to all the fairies, which again, many fairies are just a little amazed that Zack is even here at all, since like I said, their general perception is that humans were potentially extinct. Otherwise, why wouldn't they have returned to the forest? So, but ultimately Zack does convince them, especially when Pips and his gang bring something along with them, because while they were out searching for Krista, sorry, Chindy came back in. They managed to find Zax's handheld stereo, which, yeah, they bring back and show off with the help of a kangaroo, and the thing is, while they have absolutely no idea what the hell this is, doesn't really, kind of sees Zack as potential, has competition for Krista's affection, because it's clear that Pips has a thing for Krista as well, and you can tell that Pips and Zack, Pips can tell that Zack and Krista have some kind of chemistry, so he wants to try and get in the way of that, and so he's not willing to admit he has no idea what the stereo is, but Zack can tell that he's floundering, and so as he's in the middle of trying to describe what it is, he turns the stereo on and immediately starts playing music throughout the forest, which shocks all the fairies until Zack assures them, no, it's music, it's fine. And so he manages to kind of get everyone into the spirit of things. As the music plays, he dances around, and everybody just starts having fun, enjoying themselves, dancing to the music, rocking out, just having a good old time. It's all really nice and good, but as this is going on, Magi Luna is watching from the treetops, and she doesn't interfere, but you can tell that she's keeping her distance. But in the meantime, as such, as everyone's rocking out, because Pips is getting upset that Zack is getting so much positive attention, especially as he's dancing with Krista, and even at one point he and his boys pull Zack aside and offers Zack the chance to have some real FernGully fun, which I'm assuming is really just that they're going to go through some more aggressive activities to, freak Zack out. But ultimately, before they even get the chance, because, well, Zack's also trying to be a macho man, Krista pulls Zack aside and tells Pips to knock it off as she and Zack go off. At which point they also have another moment, which leads to another nice song. Which let me see again if I can find. Sorry, I don't remember the name of the songs off the top of my head. The song is called "A Dream Worth Keeping," and it's a beautiful song. That's a beautiful song as we see Zack and Krista just going through this underground waterway as they just dance across the puddles, are just enjoying each other's presence. It's actually pretty sweet, and at one point Zack even tries going in for a kiss, which does astound Krista because it's kind of clear that she likes him. I don't think they're at that point yet, which even Zack looks a little embarrassed that he had tried that. But ultimately, the pair of them are having fun, and by the end of it all, they eventually end up at a base of a waterfall, sitting on a tree, and Krista decides maybe it's time they go get Magi Luna and get Zack better. And while Zack is kind of hesitant to leave because he's having so much fun with Krista, she does say, no, we should probably do this. I brought you here, that's what I brought you here for, so I gotta go find her. And so she flies away, leaving Zack by a tree. And at first, Zack is just kind of all loony and in love, but as he's just kind of sitting around, he begins noticing something. As he holds the tree, he can feel it burning. And as Zack is confused by this, he suddenly realizes something. He can feel the tree's pain, like Krista said. And when Zack begins putting that together, he begins wondering, what's the source of the pain? And he looks down to the water, and it looks considerably less clean than it was at least a few seconds ago, as from the water coming down, he sees oil is mixed in, and Zack begins putting two and two together, and realizes that oil is from the leveler, which means that the leveler is nearby, and is probably heading straight for FernGully. At which point, Zack realizes, oh shit, I gotta warn everyone, as he runs back into FernGully. But in the meantime, back with Krista, she tries going to Magi Luna's, well, I'm going to say home, but when she tries finding Magi Luna, she's nowhere to be found. Now, as such, Krista tries, however, she did leave a trail behind, as wherever Magi Luna flew, she left flowers blooming in her wake. And so Krista does manage to follow the flowers, and finds Magi Luna resting in a tree. And at first, she's all gushing and happy, talking about all the magical things she's learned, and talking about how she met Zack, how humans are wonderful creatures and all that. But Magi Luna instead looks forlorn, as she begins looking out to as she begins pointing towards a recently cut down tree, which has just been which has been cut clean in half, which Krista is horrified by. And at first, she asks the Magiluna, can she fix it? After all, well, she did have magic powers, but Magiluna says that this level of damage is out of her control, as this was not a force of nature, this was something else, and sadly her magic doesn't work on stuff like that, which I find stupid, but whatever, let's get on with the story. As such, at first, Krista thinks that, oh, well, Zack can help us, they mark the trees with these red X's that and keep them safe, until she begins looking around and sees that all the trees that have been cut down also have that red X. At which point, Krista flies up past the canopy again, and we see that apparently the leveler really can book it when you really put the pedal to the metal, because she sees that like hundreds of trees have been cut down by this thing, and Krista begins realizing, oh, Zack lied, and she's obviously hurt by this. In the meantime, though, back with Zack, he manages to make his way back into FernGully, and at first. And it turns out that that other people have become aware of what of the leveler and its demolition, with Pips immediately being accusatory towards Zack about this whole thing. While Zack tries defending himself, Krista comes in and lets Zack know that she knows that he's full of it, that he lied to her, and she's obviously heartbroken and even flies away. But at this point, yeah, everyone begins realizing that something's going on and Zack is involved, so he does lay it bare. That yes, while he wishes that the stories of the humans were true, ultimately they are the ones responsible for what's going on in the forest. That Zack helped them, and that the thing that was cutting down the trees is headed for FernGully, so everybody needs to leave now or else they're gonna get killed by this thing. Unfortunately, no one really heeds his advice because two reasons. One, FernGully is their home, and even if the fairies ran away, they wouldn't know where to go. So they really just can't abandon ship even if they wanted to. And secondly, as Magiluna comes in, she lets them know that Hexus has been released. I'm guessing that she was aware that this was going to happen soon, or probably just guessed. I don't know. Maybe she could sense his energy, because she definitely did see all the trees that were cut down. Point is, she knows that Hexus is free, which means that even if they ran away, he would still be a major problem, so they still gotta take him out. As such, she kind of informs all the available fairies that they need to meet at this great circle, so to speak. And as such, everyone goes there, with Krista eventually following after, as her father actually went to go and comfort her. But eventually, all the fairies manage to make their way to this one tree and begin just kind of sitting around like a council, with Zack eventually following after because, well, he has nowhere else to go. As such, Magiluna lets everyone know about what's going on, and that for too long they haven't really been in tune with nature, and that they need to combine their powers right now, and they need to essentially mount a strong defense against Hexus right here, right now. Even as she grabs a seed and says that even the tiniest seed holds the greatest power, which I think is actually a good analogy. I'll get to my thoughts on that later. But from the seed, she begins. From the seed, she begins casting a spell, as she begins kind of having magic flow throughout the area, with all the fairies having to fly around and coalesce their energy into keeping this formed. And so the Magiluna begins kind of, I guess, putting her power into the seed, but as she's doing this, Krista ends up flying closer to her, because I'm guessing she's needed here. And as the more energy that Magiluna puts into the seed, the more her colors begin getting drained. And so as she gives the seed to Krista, she says that it's up to her now, that she needs to find the good in everything and everyone, believe in it, and she'll make her strong, it'll make her a hero. And as Krista takes the seed, she sees that Magiluna is literally fading away, but Magiluna assures her that it's okay, that she loves Krista and she'll always be with her. And so she goes to the place where all old mentors in movies go whenever they kick the bucket. And so her body dissolves into sparkles, and the sparkles are spread out through all the fairies, including Zack, which, yeah, he's clearly got the magic too, which, again, I kind of am okay with. They did explain in the movie that apparently everyone can be attuned to this magic, you just gotta know how to commune with it. And as such, the spell actually works, as all the trees in the forest actually begin glowing and coalescing together to form a barrier around the people of FernGully. It's nice, I like it. Unfortunately, though, it's still not enough to stop Hexus, for as soon as this ritual is over, the Leveler comes in with Hexus riding on top of it, gloating about how he's back and how he's gonna take them all down, how everybody's pretty much fucked. And so, yeah, the fairies have to try and retreat and hold down the fort as best as they can, with Krista trying to use her magic powers to try and stop the Leveler, but the Leveler has giant chainsaws on it. Basically, no matter what she throws at this thing, it breaks through it. And so Krista is essentially, it's like Krista is trying to throw a pebble at a skyscraper. It's not going to do jack right now. As such, Zack, because he knows how this thing works, realizes that if he wants to cut Hexus off at the root, he needs to turn the machine off. And since he knows the people piloting this thing, he thinks that if he can at least get close enough to, tell them what's going on, then the people piloting it can shut this whole thing down and essentially just stop Hexus. As such, he tries getting in closer, but it's easier said than done, especially because, again, he's this tall. And this thing is a whirling swarm of death, as it's got spikes and saws, claws, and everything. And while Krista is trying her best to try and hold Hexus back, it's again not doing so well, with Hexus just even mocking her at several points, even saying he should have sprayed for pests. But eventually, Zack does manage to get close enough, as Batty, who did slowly get a liking to Zack, especially when Zack did lay bare about what was going on. He decides to come in and help Zack, and after Zack messes with his little electrode, it manages to get Batty enough of a mindset to go in and want to help get Zack closer to the machine, which Zack does as he slams right onto the windshield, which at first the two guys running it are like, hey, is there a little man right there? Which does cause him to hesitate. But when Hexus just comes down and says, keep going, boys, it freaks the two guys out as they realize, holy shit, that thing is coming out of our machine, and they just bolt. As such, Hexus is now at the controls, I assume, as the machine just keeps going, and even starts getting closer to the giant magic tree that all the fairies put up. But Zack realizes that if he wants to turn this thing off, then he needs to just turn off the ignition. Because I guess this thing does have an ignition. I guess all machines would. Whatever. He has to get inside. Basically, he has to get inside the cockpit and just turn off the key. Which is, again, easier said than done. Because, again, this tall. But ultimately, he does get some last-minute assistance from Pips, who does keep him from falling back into the machine's whirlwind of death, and helps him get inside. Where after he jumps around the control panel, he manages to make it to the ignition, and with some great force, he manages to turn it off just as the machine was about to cut into the FernGully tree. Which Hexus at first is all happy for, because, oh yes, he's gonna finally kill these guys. But then when he turns off, he's like, what? As he tries siphoning, then he realizes the supply's been cut off. There's no more pollution for him to feed on. And so, without anything left to burn, he starts disappearing. He just fades away, dissipates into nothingness. And at first, it looks like everybody won. There's a moment of calm as everyone realizes, hey, the bad guy's beaten. The FernGully's saved. We don't have to do this anymore. Until the machine starts shaking and the ground starts booming. At which point Zack kind of has to get out of the machine ASAP, as from its power source arises Hexus. As it looks like he at least gained enough power from the pollutants in the machine, as he's now taken on a more viscous form, more gooey, as he's now a giant skeleton made of tar, with a cloak made of tar and fire, which, I'll give credit, it looks badass. That's a good villain design. You win, FernGully. But either way, as Hexus realizes that he's regained a form, he just starts laughing maniacally. At which point, now what are they going to do? He's clearly not drawing power from that machine anymore, and now he's strong enough to take them all out with no problem. So how can they beat him? Well, that's when Krista remembers what Magiluna said about how a littlest seed has all this great magical power, and so she decides that if she wants to take Hexus down, she needs to do a bit of a Hail Mary, as she takes a seed and then flies right into Hexus's mouth, which at first everyone's horrified by, and Hexus just laughs at her about this because he flew right into her mouth. She flew right into his mouth. Until a root starts growing out of Hexus's head, which confuses him and he knocks aside, but as he keeps doing it, more continue growing out of him. While he's able to swat them aside whenever they pop up, it's getting bigger. The roots are spreading more and more. And Pips eventually realizes, hey, we need to work together to stop this thing, and so all the fairies come out of hiding and begin swarming around Hexus, essentially excelling the growth of this thing, and essentially making it so that the roots are growing faster than Hexus can slash them apart, as they even start holding him down. And sure enough, all the magical power from all the fairies does coalesce, and little by little the roots continue growing over Hexus until eventually it traps him again in a brand new tree. One that looks like it has considerably more life to it than the last one. So yeah, Hexus is now trapped again. And so yeah, on top of that, as he gets consumed by the tree, the leveler also gets consumed. So hey, that's another one down in the dumps, but ultimately the work is done. Well, the Hexus is defeated, and thankfully, Krista made it out alive. As the tree is blooming, one of the flowers from said tree opens up, and there she is unconscious, but alright. As such, everyone is all happy, and ultimately, Krista's at least happy to see Zack, because he did do his part and did try to help, especially when everyone was fleeing, as he did try and save whoever he could, and he even bid Krista farewell during the whole thing. And so, she's happy to see Zack, and they at least are okay, say that, well, it's good now. FernGully is safe, we don't have to worry about Hexus again. And till Zack says that, what about humans? Humans could come back, this place isn't safe from them. And so, Zack decides that, well, even if Krista and him even if he and Krista both want Zack to stay, well, he can't. He has to go back and warn everyone, keep them away, and let them know that they have to change. And so, while reluctant, Krista does bid him farewell. Zack at least says goodbye to Pips and tells him he can keep the stereo. And so, as Zack walks away, Krista is able to recite the reverse spell, and thankfully, Zack does manage to grow back to his normal size. Rarity runs into the two boobs who were running the leveler before, kind of grabs them by the shoulders and tells them that things have got to change. Although before he even found them, he found Batty supposedly crushed, but well, he's alive and flies away. So hey, Batty lives too. And ultimately, Zack remembers Krista's last words to him as she told him to never forget the lessons he learned here. And so he takes the seed that Krista gave him, buries it in the dirt, and Krista manages to give the seed a bit of magic, which causes it to bloom out, spread vines all over the Hexus tree, and actually makes it one of the most vibrant trees in the forest. Which, quite frankly, I think is a nice bit of a screw you to Hexus. So, yeah, that's that. And thus the film ends as Zack and the two guys leave, and the fairies return back to FernGully, content in their existence once more. So yeah, that was FernGully, the last Rainforest. Okay, I want to say something right now. This movie is not bad. For all intents and purposes, this movie is not bad. It is not a poorly done movie. It has clearly a lot of effort put into it, and all you have to do is just watch one scene of it to see that there is a lot of love and care that was put into it, and the people that made this movie were genuinely trying to create a memorable experience for the people watching it. With that said, I don't think it's a good movie either. It feels like it's somewhere in the middle for me. Like, there are things about it that I think are good and I'm very much creative and I think make it worth watching, and other things that I genuinely just don't like and kind of hold it back. And ultimately, it just kind of results in the movie being to me. Just Now before I start trashing on it, at least let me explain what I like about the movie. And, well, if I can give one thing to FernGully, The Last Rainforest, the rainforest looks fucking beautiful. Like, hot damn. This movie does a great job at making the forest just look so unique, so full of life, so vibrant, so colorful, so amazing. And for lack of a better term, it feels magical. Again, since the whole gist of the movie is to kind of express the whole save the rainforest message, I think the film does a great job at showcasing said message by really letting the rainforest just ooze with life. Like, there's just so much there to take in every shot of the rainforest. You could in the first scene where Krista and Pips and Co are flying all across FernGully. That's just so full of life, with all these unique animals and ecosystems coexisting here, doing their own thing, being all nice and pretty, and it really does draw you in, and really does, and gives this place its own life, its own identity, stuff that makes you really want to keep, stuff that really draws you in and catches the eye. And it's that way throughout the whole movie. Everything about this movie really does look unique, and does carry with it a kind of magical air. When Krista and Zach are taking a rest at a tree, and Krista tells Zach, sorry, Ginny's right there, hold on, sorry about that. But yeah, like I said, when the scene where Krista is sitting on the mushrooms with Zach, and she tells him to listen to the forest, it's beautiful. Which is exemplified by the music that they play when it's raining like starlight. It's beautiful. It's just a joy to the eyes and the ears. It really just captures, like I said, the magic of the forest. And again, if you want to go another scene, the scene where Zach and Krista are just in that little underground waterway, just taking in all the sights, enjoying each other's company. And again, I will admit the music does help a lot in that regard, as it's still a very beautiful song. But the bright colors, the bright colors mixed with the dark environment, it really creates just a sense of wonder to this whole scene. And it really just works well. And then likewise, the environments really do have, and likewise, just as the environments could create something warm and magical and beautiful, it can also create a sense of desolation and destruction and terror. And I think it works. It genuinely works in that regard. When Krista goes to where the leveler is and where the Hexus tree is, immediately we're given a sense of unease as we see the large field that she has to fly across to reach it, and it doesn't feel like unwelcoming, but the colors feel more muted in this area compared to the forest. And then when she enters the other parts of the forest that are actually marked for demolition, it immediately just creates, immediately things feel off as she sees all the trees with the red X's on them, marking them for execution, so to speak. And no, that wasn't a pun. And then likewise, again, we actually see the Hexus tree standing alone. You just get a sense of how imposing and devilish this thing is, how cruel it is, just how you can just feel the evil and toxicity radiating off of this thing. And I think it works. It really does work. And likewise, when they want to hammer in just how bad things are, when you see the image of all the destroyed trees that the levelizers are possessed by Hex one of destroying, it still creates it still feels like awful, and it still feels awful and just awful, and like there's no life, that there's like the magic's been literally ripped out of it. And then likewise, to counterbalance it, the scene with all the fairies coming together and forming that new tree with their magic, it does actually, visually, it looks stunning, and I can't help but be drawn in. And I like it. I do genuinely like that. And if I can give another compliment to the movie, again, it goes with the music. Like as I've been saying throughout this, for the most part, the music in this film is nice. It's good. It's catchy, or charming, or beautiful, and it really does help capture the mood they're trying to set. Mind you, I don't think this works for all the music. Some songs do feel weird and out of place, like the baddie rap feels like it's trying to be too cool with the kids, and it really just does not fit. And likewise, if I'm gonna eat somebody song, it's out of place. I feel like it's there to help exemplify just how dangerous the forest can be if you're unprepared, but it also just feels weird and odd, especially since it is slightly sexual, and I am a little weirded out by it, so I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you very much. I'm not going to say anything about the rock song that was playing over Zach's little Walkman, because it's supposed to be a rock song. Even Zach was rocking out to it earlier when he had the Walkman. And likewise, the whole thing is supposed to be about him getting to know all the fairies in FernGully and actually just tune in and have fun with all of them. So to that I say, I appreciate that. I do at least like that. And then if I have to give another thing, I think Krista as a main character is nice. I like her. She's definitely kind of fits into the more curious, wide-eyed trope when it comes to main characters, but she never feels annoying. She always feels like she always feels genuine, sweet, kind, heartfelt. Like she genuinely likes to there's a reason why Maggie Luna probably wanted her to be the successor for the fairies when it came to their magic, because when it came down to Krista, it felt like that she was just so full of optimism, like she could see the brightness in anything. everything, the beauty in the world, and yeah, that sometimes made her naive and a little bit and could get her distracted when she wasn't paying attention to certain things. But with that being said, you could definitely tell that everything with her was genuine. Like, there was never any falsehoods with her. She was always just kind and caring and loving, and the only time you ever saw her really get angry was if the forest was hurt or when Zack lied to her, which both of those I feel are justifiable, since the forest is her home and she's been taught her whole life to respect it, love it, and empathize with it. And then likewise with Zack, there were clearly growing feelings there, but then when hit with a double whammy that one, Zack lied to her, and two, humans actually are causing harm to the environment, it results in her it results in a bit of a 1-2 punch that kind of shatters any preconceptions she had. But even then, it doesn't kill her spirit either, as Magi Luna does still call out to her and does have her accept the mission, have her accept the mission of being the new mage for the fairy. So I at least do like that, and I find it to be nice. But I do find that to be nice, and likewise by the end she does end up forgiving Zack because he's still clearly a decent guy who is trying to do right by both Krista, the fairies, and FernGully. So at the very least it still makes her very nice, and she clearly is doing her best to try and help out wherever she can. And as a result, I think it makes her likable, somewhat naive, but ultimately I think she's a decent main character, definitely nice, and I at least like her arc, as even when hit with reality of how dark things could be, she still tries holding out hope and tries to do her best by her family and people. So again, good stuff, and I like that. If I have to list flaws, well, actually no. Before I get to the flaws, one more thing I liked. The villain. Hexus is a good villain. He's actually very, like I said, from the very outset when you find his tree, you give it a sense, you just feel it like the scene radiates of death and toxicity, which really does help send a chill down your spine when you see it. And likewise, when Hexus is freed, it just feels just so off and slimy as we see him literally just crawling around the machine, just absorbing any toxins he can find. And the way he sounds is just ugh. Like, it actually feels slimy whenever he speaks. Tim Curry really managed to capture just how much of a creep this guy is, especially with how he just talks to people, and how he just all quick thinking, how he just all quick to the point, and yet holding back, all curious but enjoying the toxins, enjoying watching life die out, how it struggles to hold on and eventually just perishes. You really do get a sense that this guy is just evil for the sake of evil, which in some cases would be considered a problem, but he's clearly loving being evil. Hell, the song Toxic Love is just oozing with just how much he's in love with the toxins that make him powerful, with how he takes joy in siphoning the life and magic out of everything he sees, and how it's just to him, how for him stuff like that is toxic love. It's something he enjoys. It's just something. It's to him. It's just another form of love, and he just eats it all up, quite figuratively and literally. It's again good stuff. I do like that. But again, if I have to list faults with the movie, well, for starters, let's talk about Batty. I didn't like Batty. Batty was annoying. I understand he was put in this movie as a comic relief character, but I'm gonna say this right now. Robin Williams was not really being given a lot to work with here. He is not on his A game in this movie, and I'm not blaming Robin Williams. You can clearly he's trying to turn in a good performance, and a lot of his one-liners in different circumstances could be funny. But in the context of the movie, they feel unneeded, unnecessary, and don't really add any charm to what's going on. The only parts about I found genuinely amusing when it came down to him was when he was advocating for killing Zack just because he was a human. Just mostly because I just love the unfettered joy he was taking in watching Zack squirm, and the idea of him just being skinned. I love it. I liked that. That was funny. But most of the time, he's just there. He adds nothing to the movie by his existence. He really is just there to help get push Krista in the right direction, help Zack out in the climax of the movie, which could have just been done with Pips, and after that he's just around. He's just there in the movie. A lot of scenes where he was present, he could have easily been taken out of or replaced, and nothing would have changed in the flick. He's just there. And he doesn't really add anything to the movie. His one-liners aren't funny, they feel out of place, and ultimately there are many points when I just kind of forgot he was there, or when I was reminded he was there, I was like, oh, you're still here. It comes down to it, he's just not funny. Robin Williams was not given a lot to work with here, and I don't like saying that, because I do like Robin Williams' work. He was a funny man. Very talented, too, and this movie is sadly not him at his A game. He really does feel like he's lacking in that regard. So, yeah, there's one flaw out the way. And then we have to cut to Zach, too. Now, I'm going to say this right now. I don't hate Zach. I don't hate Zach as a main character. Like I said, he's a decent enough guy who does want to do good by FernGully and Krista and everything. But at the end of the day, he's not real. But at the end of the day... And ultimately he does try and do, and ultimately he is the one that helps out in the climax as he turns off the leveler that was powering Hexus, despite the great physical risk to his own cell. So at the end of the day, he doesn't deny that he had a hand in all the terrible shit. He did play a part in it, and he did do some bad stuff. It's by the end of the day, he does still want to do good and wants to help out. He's again just a good guy wanting to do right wherever he can. And just kind of working in the confines of his current position. With that said, though, I kind of also found him a little annoying too, and that's mostly because he comes across like a bodacious bro, man. Like he's trying to be cool, really jive with the kids. Let them know he's all cool and up to it and all that crap. He really is just. It feels like he's trying a little too hard, and especially when he tries hitting on Krista at some points in the movie, it really just shows how lame he can be, as when he talks about, like, when he starts bringing up human lingo, like how cool it means radical, not nice, or bodacious, like how Krista's one bodacious babe, which I admit also leads to a funny line later where Krista calls him a bodacious babe, which like, almost sounds like she's hitting on him too, which I find hilarious. But it's still annoying. It's still annoying, and it feels like it's trying too hard to be cool. Especially when Zach and Pip start getting into their dick measuring contest, which only lasts which doesn't even last a minute. It's just there. It doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't even add anything. The rivalry didn't add anything. I would say. The rivalry really did not add anything, and actually, if I can give another crap, Pips feels like a superfluous character too. He really does not feel like that he should have been in this. He doesn't really feel like he did anything in this movie. Like I said, his rivalry with Zach is nothing. It's nothing. They just get angry because they both have the hots for the same girl, and ultimately, Pips' only real contribution to the plot after that is that he helped Zach get into the leveler. So, whatever. So yeah, that's also a problem. But. The problem. And again, Zach doesn't really help. Like I said, don't hate him, but doesn't really feel that great. And then, this is what finally brings the movie down for me. This next part is what keeps it from being an alright movie, and just makes it an movie to me. Let's talk about the environmental message. Now, I'm not going to say that having an environmental message in the movie is what kills it. No. I'm not going to go that far. I think that would be a stupid argument to make about why that drags the movie down. I've seen environmental messages done well in other things. In fact, if I can give an example for one that I love, there's a video game I played called Flower, and the basic premise of the game is that you're playing as a series of flowers flowing in the wind, going through nature, seeing all these bright and different colorful varieties as they go around the world and just see all these nice things until things start getting darker. Little by little, you start seeing the appearance of man and all of his dark technologies as it starts intruding and actually begins overriding nature, causing things to be a lot more sterile and cold and much less welcoming. But then likewise, as the game goes along, you eventually gain the flowers you play as become stronger, begin building up enough force until they're able to fight back against all that. And the thing is, in that game, technology was not the root of the problem. Rather, it was progress that was the problem. And I wasn't saying that progress was a bad thing, but ultimately, it's like one of those too much of a good thing is a bad thing kind of deals. Because the ultimate point of Flower was that is that while all these technological advancements were not inherently in themselves bad, if done too much, it began overriding the parts of the world that are beautiful. And if you truly want to have a perfect world, you need to find that balance. You need to find you need to find something that evens them both out. You need to find the beauty in the you need to be able to build up without destroying, without tearing everything else down. And that was the whole point of Flower in the end, to find that balance between nature and technology. Just finding that middle ground, and ultimately only together could they create something beautiful. That progress is always a good progress if done too much can override and cause a lot and ultimately drain the life out of something. But if done in the right way, it can be done beautifully. FernGully does not have that subtlety. It is very much one of those films that operates under the mantra of humans bad, nature good, and if we want to actually repair the world, we need to go back to nature. And forgive me if that turns out that's not what the message of the movie is supposed to be, but the movie itself doesn't really do a good job at showcasing anything but what I just described. From the very outset, when you first see the leveler, it's shown as this imposing monstrosity just cutting through what we already saw was a beautiful forest, just cutting it down and destroying it with this dark, menacing music playing over it. Every single time you see this thing, it's shown like a literal monster, ripping and tearing with abandon, not giving a shit what's caught in the crossfire. Every single moment you see them, it's just shown that they are just full of vile, evil it's just vile and evil. And to be fair, again, the idea is you're not supposed... To be fair, they are going too far in that regard, but they just show it as nothing more than bad, just despicable, just cruel, and that the ones who are behind it all are man, that the old legends of humans living in tune with nature are wrong, or at the very least they're out of date. So that man nowadays is not in tune with nature, and because we're so disconnected from nature, we don't see the value of nature, we don't see the beauty in nature. What we really need is to be educated in how beautiful and serene nature is, so that we may go back to it, that we may cherish it, so that we may allow it to grow, that we can pull back a little, we can actually start admiring this, and that we can stop doing damage to the environment. Oh, go to hell, movie. Like, that just... it's really hammered in throughout the movie that man bad, nature good. And again, I'll give credit where it's due. The way they make nature look in the movie is beautiful, serene, genuinely awe-inspiring. There were many scenes that were there where I was actually kind of wide-eyed. I was like, okay, this actually is pretty nice to look at. But they really hammer in just how much humans suck. That we're the root of all evil when it comes down to all these things. We're the ones that are always destroying the environments, tearing everything down, and ultimately we're the bad guys no matter what happens. Again, like I said, if we want to really save the environment, we need to give up, we need to pull back and just admire the beauty of nature, except not really. Somewhat. Okay, I'll rein it in a little. There is one message in the movie that I think is actually beautiful and subtle. The whole idea with the seed. How Magi Luna mentions how simple magic can come from a seed. And quite frankly, I think that that actually was a very subtle way of doing the message. Actually, they're saying that planting a single seed has potential for so much life, and I think that works, because that's a nice small way that someone can help out the environment. Plant a seed, help it out, let it grow into something beautiful, and ultimately it can make something that you may be proud of and can ultimately help the world in the end. But the way they just kind of hammer it in, it makes it sound like that we're just bad people for wanting to go forward with progress, which I guess you can make the argument that the point is that we always intrude on places we're not supposed to, and that if we just keep going, it'll destroy all life. But again, the movie doesn't really do a good job at establishing that as the message. The only real message I get throughout this movie is that we as humans suck just because we want to cut down trees to make wood. Which, I'm in a house right now that was made from wood. So you're telling me we shouldn't have done that? Which, again, you can make the argument that's, again, too much progress, that we need to rein it in a little. But like I said, the movie doesn't do a good job of that. It just really, it really hammers in that humans are bad. At one point, even Hexa says, "Oh, humans, so creative and so delightful, and how on all these tools that they make for destruction and all that crap." It just feels like the film is it feels like the film is really that the film is only that the message that film is trying to hammer in is that nature is just beautiful, amazing, and awe-inspiring, and that if we want to protect it, we just need to leave it alone and just start trying to commune with it better, and that we need to be educated. And I'll give credit where it's due. I do at least find it interesting how they showcase that with Zach, because he does eventually learn, and I also give credit. I do kind of like the whole everyone can be attuned if you know the right way thing. It's an interesting idea at the very least, but what makes it fall flat, in my opinion, is the fact that the message feels so heavy-handed. Even by the end, when Zach said he has to go back because humans are going to keep coming back, and that I have to go back so they can keep them away from here. And then he takes the two guys who are running the level away and says, "Well, guys, things have to change." Like, that doesn't really feel like you're actually giving the message that you're supposed to. That too much is a bad thing, and that essentially we need to find that balance. No, it's instead saying mankind is evil, and the only way to be good is to get back to nature and live with nature and all that crap. Which, I'm sorry, I don't like. It feels so heavy-handed, and as the film goes along, there are many points where it really just felt like it was it really felt like they were just trying to throw it in your face, let you know, like, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? We're bad guys. We need to do something else. We need to be better. Blah blah blah. I was just felt like I was being preached at, and I don't like that. I understand nature is something that needs to be preserved. It needs to be cherished, and if without nature, life as we know it on this planet would cease to exist. But again, there is a better way to implement the message beyond just saying humans are bad and nature is good. There are so many better ways that it could have been implemented in the movie. But the way they do it here is just bad. It's just bad. It feels so heavy-handed and really does not carry an ounce of subtlety. And as a result, it makes the message feel very much heavy-handed and half-hearted. And ultimately, I don't care for it. It's what holds the movie back, in my opinion. Hell, during the climax of the movie, I was genuinely invested. I'm not going to deny it. When Hexus was tearing through FernGully, ripping trees apart, mocking them all as they were trying their best to hold him back, while Zack was jumping through across the machine with the help of Batty and Pips, as Krista was trying to use her new all-powerful magic to hold Hex's back from getting any closer, from harming anyone that lived in FernGully. I was genuinely invested. I was actually at the edge of my seat. I could feel my heart beating. So clearly the film was doing something right there. But then after they beat Hexes, he's like, "But humans will come back. They'll come here, so I need to leave." And oh, guys, again, it's just so fucking heavy-handed. It really feels like that they don't understand the message they're trying to get across, and as a result, it really is just not implemented well, in my opinion. And ultimately, that holds the film back so much for me. It really does hold it back. It really does hold it back and keeps me from genuinely liking the movie. So, at the end of the day, while I think that there are aspects of this movie that work and are done beautifully, amazingly, I like the animation, I love the designs for this world. Most of the songs I think work. Krista as a main character is nice. I like the magical feel. I love the magical feel. And in that one aspect, it feels like there is some, and it does feel like the people that work on the movie were genuinely trying to tell a good story. But with lame comedic relief, one half of the main characters being kind of annoying in that regard, and with such a heavy-handed message, and with how prevalent it is throughout the whole goddamn movie, it just makes the film feel to me. And again, I'm not saying, and ultimately, it just feels to me. I don't hate it. Again, there's plenty in there that I like, but there's also enough in there that really does hold it back. And ultimately, would I show this film to my kids if I had any? I don't think I would. I don't think I would. Maybe if they were older and at least were educated enough, I could feel like there's still enough in there that you could appreciate about the film. And like I said, it's clear that people making the movie really were trying to make something that was good and that they could be proud of. But ultimately, I feel like that the film itself just falls flat in too many areas that. While I won't say that it's a bad movie in and of itself, I still don't think it's a good one either. It's just at the end of the day, an movie. Not too horrible, but not too great either. Just very much right there in the middle. Enough in there. There's stuff that works, stuff that doesn't. Ultimately, though, I say it's up to you. If you think that this is a movie that, if you think that this is a movie that you will genuinely enjoy, then by all means, seek it out. You'll probably see something in there that I don't, and hey, maybe you can look past the environmental message and see something and maybe actually see something in there that's good. Hell, maybe the environmental message will work for you. After all, like I said, the seed message I think was subtle enough that I think it could work. But in too many other areas, I feel. But in this one big area, I feel it just holds. I think this one big area holds the film back, and ultimately, it just is not. I don't think this film is for me. I don't hate it, but there are definitely other films that I would watch over this one. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. Again, Badger, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, and I'm so sorry. I do hope you continue enjoying this movie and loving it for what it was. I just think that for me, it's. Not really. I don't think I'd watch it again. I don't think I'd really watch it again unless there was nothing else better on. So, again, sorry, dude, but I do hope that you at least enjoyed the video, and I hope that you don't come and kill me afterwards. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I hope either way, I hope the rest of you have enjoyed this video, and ultimately, like I said, if you think that if what I've described here sounds like a movie that you'd be interested in looking for, check it out. You can probably find this online somewhere. It's definitely, like I said, there's still a lot in there to enjoy, and again, if it wasn't for this big aspect, I probably would give this movie a thumbs up. But at the end of the day, anyway, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the video. I thank you for watching if you stayed this far, and, well, next time we meet, we're going to be looking at the film suggested to me by a friend of mine from my early internet days by the name of Zach Spark, as we take a look at the Super Mario Brothers movie. No, not the animated one, the live-action one, the one that everybody hates.